in Syria and Iraq are facing water shortages as the region's longest river, the Euphrates, dries up.
Beneath the Euphrates River, a hidden cave has just been unsealed, and what was found inside has shaken the foundations of history, faith, and prophecy. 4 fallen angels, beings of terrifying power, locked away since before recorded time, and now exposed. Scholars are speechless, believers are rattled, and the world is asking one question nobody wants to answer. Is this the sign Scripture warned us about? Because if it is, the countdown to Christ's return isn't a distant prophecy anymore. It's now. The Lost Cave. For thousands of years, the Euphrates River has traced its path through the heart of the Middle East, winding silently through deserts, valleys, and ancient civilizations that once shaped the course of human history. From the days of Babylon to modern Syria and Iraq, its waters have witnessed empires rise in glory and fall into ruin, carrying on as if time itself could not disturb its course. Generations came and went, each treating the Euphrates as a constant, predictable, enduring, almost untouchable in its quiet authority. Yet beneath its surface lay a history no one could fully see, buried under sediment, shifting earth, and the slow passage of centuries. Then, in early 2026, the river began to change. A severe drought swept across the region, pushing temperatures higher and rainfall lower than locals could remember in living memory. As documented in regional climate monitoring reports, rivers across the Middle East have experienced fluctuating water levels in recent years. But what unfolded along parts of the Euphrates was especially dramatic. Near areas like Deir ez-Zor in Syria, the river receded far beyond its usual banks, exposing stretches of riverbed that had remained hidden for centuries. At first, it was just cracked earth and scattered debris. But as the waters withdrew further, something unusual began to emerge. Opening carved deep into the exposed ground, partially obscured by collapsed rock and layers of compacted sediment. What looked like a natural formation quickly raised questions among locals who had never seen anything like it in the region. Whispers spread. Then curiosity followed. Small groups of villagers, and later organized teams of explorers and researchers, cautiously approached the site. With limited equipment and growing uncertainty, they descended toward the darkened entrance. The air shifted as they moved inward, cooler, stiller, and unnervingly quiet compared to the harsh desert outside. Their flashlights cut thin paths through the darkness. What they found was not a simple hollow, but a vast underground chamber system stretching deeper than expected. Its walls carved and shaped in ways that suggested ancient activity. Stalactites hung like frozen time. Narrow tunnels branched into larger caverns, some collapsing into sealed sections that hinted at unexplored depths. And then came the silence that followed discovery, the kind that makes even trained explorers hesitate. The deeper they went, the more the atmosphere seemed to change. Not necessarily in a supernatural sense, but in the psychological weight of isolation, scale, and the unknown. Every sound echoed too long. Every shadow seemed to extend just beyond the reach of light. Within hours of the first reports, the discovery began spreading online and among amateur researchers. Those who had read the Bible immediately referenced the text. Revelations 9, verses 14 to 15, which speaks symbolically of beings associated with the Euphrates being restrained until an appointed time. The story immediately captured global attention, not because it's new, but because what was thought to be old was resurfacing centuries later. How could a structure of such scale remain hidden beneath one of the most historically significant rivers on Earth? What ancient civilization might have interacted with it? And why did its emergence feel so symbolically charged to so many who heard the news? As reports spread, the Euphrates transformed once again in the public imagination, not just as a river of history, but as a place where prophecy has been fulfilled over and over again. And in that tension between geology, archaeology, and belief, the discovery became something larger than itself. A reminder of how much of the future may still be buried beneath the past, waiting for the right moment to be seen. And its beginning can all be tied to one city, one moment in history. The Cyrus prophecy. The ancient city of Babylon was not just a city, it was a symbol of power, wealth, and human pride. Situated along the Euphrates River in modern-day Iraq, Babylon stood as one of the most heavily fortified cities of the ancient world. Massive double walls, deep moats, and strategic defenses made many historians believe it was nearly impossible to conquer by conventional warfare. Yet history records a moment that still feels almost cinematic in its execution. In 539 BC, Babylon fell to Cyrus the Great of Persia without a prolonged siege or catastrophic destruction of its walls. Ancient sources, including the Greek historian Herodotus, describe a surprising military strategy. Cyrus redirected the waters of the Euphrates River. As the river level dropped, Persian soldiers marched along the exposed riverbed, entering the city through its unguarded river gates, while the Babylonians were caught off guard during a time of celebration. What makes this event especially intriguing for Bible readers is how closely it aligns with prophetic scripture written long before Cyrus was even born. In the book of Isaiah, specifically Isaiah 44, 27-28, the Bible states, "Who says to the deep, 'Be dry, and I will dry up your rivers'? Who says of Cyrus, 'He is my shepherd, and will accomplish all that I please'? He will say of Jerusalem, 'Let it be rebuilt,' and of the temple, 'Let its foundations be laid.'" This passage is remarkable for two reasons. First, it references the drying up of waters, an image that some Christians connect symbolically to Cyrus's strategy of diverting the Euphrates River to gain entry into Babylon. Second, it names Cyrus explicitly, despite the prophecy being written about 150 years before his birth. For many theologians and biblical scholars, this is one of the most striking examples of predictive prophecy in the Hebrew Scriptures. Cyrus is also uniquely referred to as a Messiah or Anointed One in Isaiah 45, verse 1. Not because he was an Israelite king, but because he was chosen to fulfill a divine role in restoring the Jewish people from exile. Historical corroboration of Cyrus's decree can also be found in extra-biblical sources, such as the Cyrus Cylinder, now housed in the British Museum, which records his policy of allowing displaced peoples to return to their homelands and rebuild their temples. When placed together, ancient prophecy, recorded history, and archaeological evidence, the fall of Babylon becomes more than just a military conquest. For believers, it becomes part of a larger narrative, a pattern in which events in history appear to align with scriptural declarations made long before their fulfillment. This is why many Christian teachings use Babylon's fall as a reference point when discussing prophecy and the fact that the Bible was not lying about anything written therein. If one prophecy about a world empire and a named ruler was fulfilled in such a precise and unusual way, it naturally raises deeper questions about other prophetic passages in Scripture, especially those concerning future events described in books like Daniel and Revelation. Within that framework, Babylon's fall is not only history, it becomes a signpost in a much larger story that is still unfolding. Speaking of unfolding, let's find out what else was discovered in the Euphrates River. The Big Discovery. The astonishing discovery beneath the Euphrates did more than stun archaeologists. It sent a shockwave straight through the pages of Scripture itself. Almost immediately, attention turned to one of the most chilling and enigmatic passages in the entire Bible. In Revelation 9, verses 14 and 15, the text describes something that has haunted theologians for millennia. 4 angels, bound at the great river Euphrates. Not resting, not wandering, bound. Held in supernatural chains, suspended in darkness, waiting for a moment so precisely defined it defies human comprehension. A specific hour, a specific day, a specific month, a specific year, not a vague someday. A locked-in appointment on a cosmic calendar that no human hand set. And these were no ordinary celestial beings. These were fallen angels, beings of catastrophic power, creatures of immense darkness, whose imprisonment beneath the river was never meant to be permanent. According to Scripture, their release would not be quiet. It would not be subtle. It would be the unleashing of destruction so total, so overwhelming, that it would command an army beyond anything history has ever recorded. A force so vast it could bend the arc of human civilization itself. For centuries, scholars, theologians, and generations of believers wrestled with what this passage truly meant. Many retreated to the comfort of symbolism, insisting the text was metaphorical. A spiritual warning dressed in dramatic imagery, never intended to be taken as a literal, physical event. Others waved it off entirely as allegory, a poetic device used by ancient writers to communicate moral truth, not prophetic fact. It was easier that way, safer. As long as the Euphrates remained just a river, the debate could stay safely within the walls of academia and theology, but then the ground gave way. The discovery of a massive underground cave sealed beneath the Euphrates, untouched, undisturbed, hidden for what appears to be thousands of years, has shattered that comfort. The chamber's sheer scale, its inexplicable preservation, and its eerie alignment with the geography described in the ancient text have thrown every previous assumption into question. Scholars who spent careers dismissing this passage as purely symbolic are now being forced to reconsider. Because what lies beneath that riverbed bears a striking resemblance to the very imagery written down by John of Patmos nearly 2,000 years ago, a hidden place, sealed off from the world, waiting. The reverberations are being felt far beyond the archaeological community. Religious communities across the globe are gripped by the implications. Historians are scrambling for context, and the questions, once considered purely philosophical, are suddenly feeling urgent, pressing, and deeply unsettling. Could the prophecy be describing something real? Something physical? Is humanity standing at the threshold of events that were written down long before any of us were born? And if the seals on that chamber were to break, if whatever lies within were to be released, what would that mean for nations, for civilization, for the planet itself? The Euphrates has always been more than a river. It is the cradle of the oldest human civilizations, a boundary marker in ancient empires, a thread woven through the fabric of recorded history, and now it may be something else entirely. A vault, a lock, a site where something was placed and something was promised. The Bible was always clear on one point. The angels bound at the Euphrates would not stay bound forever. The hour was already set. The day has already been chosen. The only question left, the one no one can answer yet, is whether that hour has finally come. Inside the cave. When the archaeologists finally pushed past the threshold and ventured deep into the cave, nothing could have prepared them for what waited in the dark. The main chamber is staggering. Nearly 200 feet beneath the riverbed, carved out of solid rock, an immense subterranean hall stretches into the blackness. A space so vast, so deliberately constructed, that the idea of it forming naturally collapses almost immediately. This was not an accident of geology. Something, or someone, intended for this place to exist. And whatever that purpose was, it was built to last. But it was the walls that stopped everyone cold. Embedded into the solid rock face at intervals throughout the chamber were enormous iron rings, each several feet wide, anchored into the stone with a permanence that suggested they were never meant to come loose. These were not fixtures built for human prisoners. The scale alone rules that out. The diameter of each ring, the thickness of the iron, the depth at which they were set into the rock, all of it points to something engineered to restrain a force of extraordinary magnitude. Whatever was held here was not meant to struggle free, and whoever built this knew exactly what kind of strength they were containing. The rings alone would have been enough to unsettle the team, but the walls surrounding them told a story that cut even deeper. Every surface, floor to ceiling, was covered in carvings, inscriptions etched so deeply into the stone that they survived what appears to be thousands of years without fading, without crumbling, preserved with an almost unnatural clarity. Some of the symbols bore clear resemblance to ancient Mesopotamian script, to pictographic systems that predate most of recorded civilization. But the content of these inscriptions went far beyond trade records or royal decrees, far beyond anything archaeologists had come to expect from sites in this region. They spoke of beings, not human beings, something else entirely. Supernatural entities of immense power, creatures described in terms that carry unmistakable weight, defiant, dangerous, imprisoned not by men, but by divine decree. The inscriptions describe 4 specific entities, 4 rebellious forces who had risen against their creator, whose punishment was not death but confinement, bound, sealed, hidden beneath the earth until a moment that was not chosen by chance, but predetermined. A fixed point in time already written into the structure of existence itself. The further the team moved through the chamber, the more the atmosphere seemed to shift. Researchers described it in terms that are difficult to categorize clinically. A heaviness in the air, a pressure that had nothing to do with depth or temperature. Seasoned archaeologists who had spent careers in tombs, ruins, and burial sites across the ancient world found themselves struggling to shake the sensation that the cave itself was aware, that the silence was not empty, but loaded. Every iron ring they passed, every carved inscription they traced with their flashlights, added another layer to a picture that was becoming harder and harder to explain away. For historians, the discovery demands a rewriting of assumptions. For archaeologists, it presents a site unlike anything in the existing record. And for religious scholars, particularly those who have spent lifetimes studying the Bible, knew that this was prophecy coming to pass right before our eyes. Because this cave does not feel like a relic. It does not carry the dusty, inert quality of something simply old. It feels active, suspended, like a sentence that was started a very long time ago and has not yet reached its period. The iron rings are real, the inscriptions are real, the chamber is real. And that raises a question that no one on the research team has been able to fully set aside since the day they walked in. The researchers documented what they could see. But several have admitted quietly that being inside that chamber produced something beyond documentation, an abstract weight, a sense of proximity to something immense and restrained, not gone, not absent, but waiting. And if something is still waiting down there, sealed beneath 200 feet of rock and river, what happens when the waiting ends? As a matter of fact, these are only a few of the things that indicate the impending second coming of Jesus. Global conflict. Across centuries, certain biblical passages have been as frequently revisited in times of global tension as Jesus' words in the Olivet Discourse. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. as seen in Matthew 24. Many interpreters argue that the modern world presents a historical intensity of conflict that feels uniquely aligned with this prophecy. Not necessarily because war is new, but because its scale, speed, and global interconnectedness are unprecedented. The 20th century alone marked a dramatic shift in human warfare. The First World War and Second World War were not confined to regional disputes. They engulfed continents, involved dozens of nations, and resulted in an estimated over 100 million combined military and civilian casualties. These conflicts reshaped borders, collapsed empires, and redefined global power structures. What stands out to many modern readers of Matthew 24 is not only the existence of wars, but the global awareness of wars. For the first time in history, conflict is broadcast in real time. A battle in Eastern Europe, unrest in the Middle East, or insurgencies in Africa are instantly visible worldwide. This creates a continuous background of conflict, news alerts, political warnings, military escalations, and intelligence reports that keep global tension alive even outside active war zones. Organizations like the United Nations document thousands of ongoing conflicts, arms buildups, and military expenditures annually. Their data shows that while full-scale world wars have not repeated since 1945, armed conflicts have become more fragmented. Civil wars, proxy wars, terrorism, cyber warfare, and hybrid conflicts replacing traditional battlefield lines. We constantly see how nation rising against nation is often displayed as increasingly complex internal and external struggles that may result in conventional wars. The phrase "rumors of wars" also gains new relevance in the digital age. Misinformation, rapid political speculation, and viral conflict narratives spread faster than verified facts. A single incident can escalate into global anxiety within hours, even before diplomatic or military realities are confirmed. Platforms and news cycles amplify the sense that conflict is always imminent somewhere in the world. For believers who are biblically educated, the modern era feels unusually consistent with what the Bible prophesied. Constant wars, constant threats of wars, and constant global awareness of both. Moral shift. And that leads us to another prophecy in the second book of Timothy, as one of the most frequently discussed passages when people reflect on moral and cultural change in the modern world. In the last days, perilous times will come, for people will be lovers of themselves. The passage continues with a striking list of human attitudes: self-centeredness, pride, lack of gratitude, broken family relationships, and a weakening of restraint. For many interpreters, the question is not whether these traits have ever existed before, but whether they now appear more widespread, normalized, and amplified through modern systems. In contemporary society, one of the most frequently cited shifts is the rise of radical individualism. Cultural analysts and sociologists note that identity and personal fulfillment increasingly center on the self. Platforms built on personal expression, such as social media, encourage users to curate identity, attention, and validation in real time. According to research, a majority of adults and a vast proportion of younger people engage daily with digital platforms that shape self-image, social comparison, and public validation. Christian leaders often refer to these frightening signs and point to the phrase "lovers of themselves" as symbolically resonant with a culture increasingly shaped by self-branding, personal visibility, and algorithm-driven attention economies. In such environments, the self is not only lived privately, but constantly performed publicly. The passage also describes people as lovers of money, boastful, proud, traits some argue are intensified in highly competitive digital economies. Platforms that reward visibility and influence can amplify status-driven behavior, where success is measured in followers, engagement, and monetization. Family and relational breakdown is another theme often highlighted. The text also mentions people being disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy. While family structures, factures differ across cultures and eras, several organizations document ongoing global concerns around family stress, youth vulnerability, and changing household dynamics influenced by urbanization, migration, and economic pressure. Another striking element in modern interpretation is the role of digital life itself. The rise of smartphones, constant connectivity, and algorithmic content delivery has reshaped attention, relationships, and even moral discourse. Studies referenced by global institutions highlight how online environments influence behavior, opinion formation, and emotional well-being. The phrase having a form of godliness but denying its power is also frequently discussed in modern contexts. It is often interpreted as describing societies where religious or moral language remains present, but internal transformation or ethical consistency appears weakened. Of course, doubters will argue, but every time these prophecies are revisited, one thing is certain. We see ourselves more clearly in these texts as if they were mirrors. If this video opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. Because what we're covering next makes this look like just the beginning. Stay ready.